Grey Zone Warfare's latest 0.4 update Spearhead is releasing very soon on the 31st of March, and today I'll be going through everything that we know so far so that you're up to speed when it drops, or deciding whether to jump back in again when it does launch. Now, some of you might be confused because originally Dark Revelations was supposed to be next as 0.4, but Spearhead has replaced this with a much bigger update than was originally intended. So, what is changing? There are two really massive things that I want to highlight before anything else, which are the changes to the AI and the way that we interact with them, and the overhaul of the tasking system. So firstly, AI. We are now getting 7 different AI factions and 12 different bosses associated with them. The key here is that the different factions wear a uniform that is identifiable to the player, whilst keeping the models varied so they don't all look the same. This means that, with experience, you'll be able to tell which faction you are fighting against, and this is going to inform you either how to fight them or what equipment to bring to fight them. The factions are going to use different weapons and equipment, such as body armor, based on their affiliations, so this is going to change your strategy on how to defeat them, or maybe even run away. The bosses themselves that are associated with these factions are going to drop unique weapons and armor, so it's going to be well worth fighting them to go and get that special equipment. This is either going to be items you can't get elsewhere, or existing weapons but with unique skins and customization. The world of Grey Zone has slowly been filling out, and in 0.3 it did feel better, but in 0.4 there are now going to be roaming patrols of AI moving through the map in various places, which I think the game really needed. This means that you can't be sure when you're going to run into AI, and as we said before, you're going to have to work out who it is before deciding to engage, especially given that these AI are going to work together better than they used to, so you're going to have to be careful. The deeper you get into the map, the harder they're going to be. To balance this out, we have the new hit reaction system, where AI responds much more realistically to getting shot. We all know the situation in most FPS games where you shoot at a non-player enemy and they just continue shooting back at you with perfect aimbot regardless of the damage that they receive. Earlier versions of Grey Zone actually used to be pretty bad for this as well, but with the new system, AI will respond to getting shot properly, hunching over, holding limbs, bending down, and this means that even if you don't manage to kill an enemy and you snag a glancing blow, you'll at least delay them and give yourself some breathing space. With these features, the AI is going to be a lot more interesting already, but only if there is more to do. So let's talk about the other most important feature coming to Spearhead, which is changes to the task system. Those of you who played 0.3 will already know how much better Grey Zone Warfare became when you didn't need to go back to base after completing every single mission. But in 0.4, you can now see and accept new tasks directly on the overview map itself, and how you complete these tasks no longer requires you to visit a wiki page either, breaking away from games like Escape from Tarkov, where it's very difficult to complete these things without looking it up online. Madfinger, the developer, wants players to stay in the game when completing contracts and missions, and so now the approximate area where you're going to find what you need is labelled on the map itself. This is sometimes enhanced with pictures from the traders, with buildings of focus or areas you might need to search in, making tasking much more organic and less of looking stuff up on the internet. This combination is huge, as it makes it very possible for players to find these things themselves, and it means that for the most part you can move from one task to another without leaving the game or going back to base if you don't want to, given you complete the missions through the messenger screens now while you're still in raid. The whole map has been split into subsections, and you'll unlock new missions in the later areas of the map by completing tasks in the previous subsection. I'm not totally sure how I feel about this one, because I quite liked 0.3's organic discovery of the next areas, but we'll have to play it and feel it out. The tasks themselves have been reworked into 3 types. There's main tasks, side tasks, and contracts, which range in difficulty and time required depending on how long your session is. So main tasks are usually the longest and contracts the fastest, meaning that there is always something to do regardless of how long you have to play. Even more missions have been added, with 250 now in total as of 0.4, with many of the old ones reworked as well to give more variety and prevent doing the same type of task over and over again. These missions are also going to be more distributed across the entire map than before, and not just located at points of interest like they were previously, with some of them deep into the jungle, giving you a much greater range of things to do around the map. What's more is that you can replay most of the tasks in the game, and although you'll get more reward for doing them the first time, that means that there'll always be something to work on every time that you log in. One really interesting feature that's going to change the tasking system quite a bit is that a lot of these now fail when you die. This means that you have to wait a while before they reappear again so you can have a second try, and it also might mean that you lose reputation with that particular trader as well. At first glance, I thought this was going to be really annoying, but the ramifications are a bit deeper than that. You can't just accept every single task that you're given anymore, like Tarkov, then you have to think a lot more carefully about which ones you want to accept and which ones that you want to leave for the moment. Do remember that with Grey Zone Warfare, you can pick up and hand in completed tasks while you are still out in the field using the map, so you could do one after another no problem. This would be much more of an issue with Tarkov structure where you can't interact with the traders in raid. So in Grey Zone, I actually think it's going to be quite good. Before we look at any of the other features, let's just talk about performance quickly because I know it's a big focus for this game. Basically, if you haven't played since 0.3.5 release, you're going to see a pretty big improvement in FPS, RAM usage, and optimizations for lower end machines. They've done a ton of work on improving FPS in general, and I think most people will be pleasantly surprised from the improvements in this department if they haven't played for a while. Alongside these general improvements, DLSS 4.5 is on the way, and I think it looks really good in outdoor environments, so I'm looking forward to that in this game in particular. And FSR4 is already in the game for those AMD users out there. So outside of these main features, there is a ton of other things that we have to look forward to, from small quality of life features to fairly big changes like the environment adjustments. 0.4 will include different biomes, so the whole map doesn't feel the same, and buildings will have a greater range of damage, which interestingly will have some bearing on the loot quality inside. You'll now be able to see faction members on the compass directly to make combat a bit easier, and a bunch of other systems have been reworked as well, such as 2 stages of running, one for moving faster than walking as usual, and the other for a sprint that nails your stamina, gets you where you need to go extremely fast in a pinch. Various player animations have been reworked to look more realistic, and even the weapons have had a full pass on stats affecting handling, such as ADS speed and weapon sway being controlled by the different attachments that you put on guns. Ammo stats will now be more understandable, showing the lowest armor that a round gets stopped by, and higher grade ammos will give more wear on weapon barrels. Ballistics itself has had another pass as well to make every caliber useful, and of course there'll be a bunch of new guns too. A full skippable tutorial has been added to the opening of the game for new players, with detailed descriptions of the movement, meds and shooting systems, as well as a full field manual with over 110 pages for existing players to get a refresh on every system in the game. Vendors have been rebalanced to become more specialised, with prices adjusted on top end gear to be more expensive, but this is balanced out by the greater variety of loot that the game was sorely missing before, as well as a bunch of lore items, books, flyers and posters to immerse players in more of the story and lore of the game world rather than just being a sandbox shooter, as we move slowly towards the release of Ground Zero when the game actually launches finally. So all of this and more is coming on the 31st of March. There will be an early opening on the 27th for both creators and supporter level game owners this time around, which is a big plus, but this next update is looking to be a pretty big one and is probably worth checking out when it drops. So as usual, a big shout out to all my patrons, and as always, have fun in your raids.